morning, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea. This is Walter Winchell. Let's go to press. Flash!
You can't be Walter Winchell. He got a better offer. He's in heaven.
Welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. This morning we certainly have a great personality, and we're going to have a little perspective on what's going on in Lincoln, Illinois, and in the business world. Greg, we always start Viewpoint with a kudo or two. This morning, I'm going to defer to Mrs. Busby for the first kudo regarding
yes,
rockers.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Saturday evening, there's up in Emden, there is an establishment that's called the Stagger Inn, because they're the Stags, the Emden Hardham Stags. So anyway, they had a young man working there whose name is Matthew Knight. And Matthew is the grandson of Dr. Dean Doolin, who was and his parents before him were long-time residents here. And his mom is Martha Knight, and Matthew is 29 years old, and he has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he did work at the Stagger Inn for a bit, and they were just nuts about him. He's a nice kid, really a nice kid.
That's correct.
And they decided that, by George, health costs, in spite of Obamacare being what they are, or maybe because of Obamacare, we'll argue that later. And then they decided they'd have this. They organized the whole thing. They funded the whole thing. You could have a free beer. You could have free food. You could play in the bead bag tournament. You could buy a 50-50 ticket. You could bid on neat items that were, what do they call those auctions, you know, where a blind auction? Silent auction. Well, silent, blind, deaf and dumb, whatever. But be that as it may, there were 5 million people there, give or take. And I suspect that the fundraising went pretty well.
Hope so.
And I can't believe that an employer would go to the wall like that for an ex-employee. I think that was, you know, I've been studying, Greg, for a long time to be the resident professional cynic around here.
Studying.
And I've done a good job, haven't I, Bill?
Further deponent saith not.
Okay. But this really dented that. I mean, this restored my faith in human nature, legislature aside, okay? I just thought it was the most wonderful thing. It was just, the support was just amazing. Totally amazing. Thank you for the time. Bye.
Did you have the clock on that? That will go in to the Guinness Book of Records as the longest kudo since Viewpoint's been on the air. But
they don't call me Motor Mouth for nothing, Jim.
Used to be my nickname.
I'm really happy to have you make that kudo for the folks over there at the Stagger Inn. That's a great thing. So and we wish Matt all the luck in the world. He's a classmate of grandson Chris. So,
nice
so anyway,
kid.
the nice thing, once again, Greg, it's a community gathering together to do something for one of its own, and that's really neat.
As good as it gets.
My quick kudo would be last night. Went down last night to welcome another honor flight home, and again, our governor showed up with his aides, you know, that come around with the little things running around their ears. But he just slips in there with those guys, and he worked the crowd very graciously, took his time, visited with the great Basford and Jim Ash and Judy, and talked with them, and particularly great to see him with the kids. He got down on his knees and had kids around him, and parents bring their young scouts in uniform, and it's just a slice of Americana.
It's beautiful.
It's just great. So I think we got some business to talk about this morning, Judith K.
Oh, but one thing, Jim.
Wait a minute, I'll talk to Jim.
Were you at WPRC when Governor Walkendan came to be our guest?
No.
Well, he came with his entourage, of course, and they came into WPRC, which is a little tiny building out on Old 66, and they all had their guns drawn at us, threatening people who were in the building. It kind of took me aback, and you'll recall that Governor Walker moved to Duluth, Minnesota, courtesy of the government.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, he was one of those.
Yeah,
okay.
it wasn't for an
You
extended
recall that,
vacation.
Greg? When he, well, no, you were not living in state then, but he walked from Cairo to Rockford, you know.
Right.
But he didn't walk to Duluth.
No, the honor flight thing, Bill, that's just such a wonderful thing. And yeah, my father was a Korean War veteran, and there's one thing before he passed 4.5 years ago that we wish we would have done, and it's just one of those things that I'll regret forever is not putting him on an honor flight. And
well, you probably, Greg, didn't really have a keen awareness of it.
We didn't. You're right.
It's becoming
exactly
more
right.
and more, or has become, not becoming, it has become a long time ago, very, very prominent. And it's interesting to think, and I've talked about this before, it speaks to how one person can make a difference, because this all started with a captain in the Air Corps who was a medic. In professional, I mean, he retired and was back in civilian life and seeing patients over in Ohio. And this is right after Bob Dole's World War II memorial opened up, and he just said in conversation about something about going, and fell, so that'd be out of my... Anyway, he got thinking about that, and he thought this old fellow ought to see that. And before it was all said and done, they had 5 or 7, I've forgotten. He belonged to a flying club out there in Ohio. And he got his fellow flyers, and each of them took a passenger, and that was the first visit to the honor flight. 5 or 7 fellows.
Wow.
One man made a difference.
Well, you're right. It's gotten so big now. It's got national acclaim, and what a great thing to do to honor the people who have served our country. I can't imagine anything that is more appropriate.
Well, another thing. We're going to get to the subject matter here yet. The guys I go with, Orville Schaefer and Wayne Shealy, they always like to stop at the Waffle House down there at Williamsville. Go early. So anyway, we were visiting with a couple in the next booth there, and conversation went on, and it came time for us to leave. Our bill had been paid.
Really?
Just really.
Pay it forward, huh?
Really got to me.
I think there's been, certainly in the last 10 to 20 years, a resurgence and appreciation of our military servicemen and women and the veterans who have served, regardless of whether it was in peacetime or in wartime, that you don't know when you enter the service what you could be thrust into, and I think it's absolutely the right thing to do to show that
72 years ago was mine, and people come up and say thank you for your service.
Yeah.
That's a humbling thing. Let's introduce this fellow officially.
Let's get to
business. It'll be time for a commercial.
I enjoy talking about this stuff too, so believe me. No problem
I like
there.
you being here.
Thank you.
You're a nice man.
You don't know me.
And filled with patience.
Exactly the way I told her to say it, Jim.
Greg Basford is with us today, and he is the president of Heritage Packaging, and I know you know where that is. It's right out 5th Street Road, right-hand side. Nice looking building, kind of a yellowish, I'd say, about the color of my living room, in case you're interested, Greg.
Okay.
I like it. Okay?
Good.
Okay.
I won't tell you that we're going to paint it white eventually. But
be that as it may, I knew the people who preceded you there. They were friends of ours, Al and Nancy Prisk. And they began that, and it's a thriving business, and we welcome you to the community here.
Thank you.
And also, you serve as a volunteer here in the community. I'm a big believer in volunteers.
Important. He's got his plate very full running a very significant business, and yet he finds time to volunteer, and for that he gets a rap on the knuckles once in a while.
Yeah. Well, no good deed goes unpunished.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was reading this, and
Show that up so the people can see it on TV.
I'll show you. It talks a little bit about the kind of packaging, and you know, I think we think about, well, we've always called them the box factory, and a box. A box is a box is a box, not.
Nope, not in our world.
Yeah.
No,
that's for sure.
not at all. Some boxes will be here for the archaeologists, won't they?
Indeed. Indeed they will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty stout.
Now, you send out somebody to call on the people and find out exactly what they want, what logo they need on it, and all those kinds of things, and you can bring to them then whatever size, shape, color they want.
Yeah, generally speaking, that's true. We're a custom box manufacturer, so we're not the company you're going to go online or pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I need 20 10 by 10 by 10s. Those are stock box companies. We're a custom box manufacturer. In addition to being a custom box manufacturer, we also sell packaging supplies, anything that touches our customer's product before it goes out the door. To wrap the product in the carton, to wrap the loads in stretch film. But what we do is help them to arrive at the right carton, the most cost-effective manner, the right style of carton, the right, what we call board grade, the right paper grade based on the fragility of the product, how it's being shipped, the weight of the project, the value of the product. And we have a full-time designer that accompanies our salespeople that you made reference to. We have outside salespeople, and they go out and solicit business from other businesses who are looking to have somebody supply the package to help them arrive at the right shipping container to ship their product safely and effectively.
That film that they wrap the pallet in, that's a relatively new idea and sure a better idea.
Well, stretch film's been around for a while, and
yeah, but I mean, not as long as I've been around. Okay.
Well, I can't.
Nobody.
I don't know the date on either.
Not
So.
going there.
But yeah, it helps keep a load of cartons secure in a truck as 53-foot tractor and trailers are bouncing over the highway. Units move inside a tractor and trailer, and sometimes cartons can fall.
Yep.
This is what our customers don't want the cartons that we're shipping them flat to be all over the trailer. In addition, when they fill up those cartons with their product and they ship them out, they will often stretch wrap them so they arrive at their customer's destination in the same good condition.
I'd like to address this question, Mr. Basford. A lot of us local yokels forever, just that we have Heritage Packing down the line, and then what used to be U.S. Corrugated, and it's many names under various corporations. They're at the corner of 5th and the Parkway. Some people say, well, gosh, the competitors are just down the road from one another. So let's address that issue, because it's very interesting. As you explained to me yesterday, you work back and forth in concert with one another. You use each other's products.
Yeah, you're exactly right. International Paper, the folks down the road, which is the largest paper producing company in the world, certainly nationally, is a customer of ours, a supplier of ours. We supply product to them when they have needs that kind of fall outside of what is their sweet spot, yet they can't pass on all the business. They have to take it all on. Some of that business they outsource us. So they're a great customer, great people. We've had nothing but a positive relationship going back to the risks with the companies that have resided in that building before IP. Ultimately, it's the same people, just a different name on the building. But yeah, where they fit in, they're a high-volume producer of corrugated cartons. They're after the large national Kraft Foods, Procter & Gamble type of stuff. That's where they live, and what they call the cut-up of paper. How many tons of paper are they shipping? I couldn't tell you how many tons of paper we ship. I don't care. Where we fall is below that threshold. We're looking for the mid-sized to smaller users who have sometimes have more specific needs as to how their package has to arrive, the additional things that need to happen to the carton before it even arrives at their facility. That's where we live. So we're lower volume, kind of higher margin business, and they're higher volume, a little bit lower margin business. But where they fit and we fit are two different places in the market, and we're generally almost never competitors.
Isn't it right to work together?
We do. Yep.
Is it safe to say
they supply us paper
that they bring the the cardboard or the paper in from the trees.
Correct.
They get it in big rolls. Is that correct there?
Well, they actually, yeah, they own the mill that takes that wood, those trees from the forest, and cut them down, pulp them, and make that pulp into a corrugated sheet liner. On that machine, then it is rolled into what you made reference to, Bill, the rolls. The rolls are then taken to a plant like the Lincoln, where it's combined, the Lincoln factory, where it's combined into a corrugated sheet. And they take that corrugated sheet, sometimes sell it on the outside, not onto the Lincoln plant. That's primarily just a converting plant. So the paper they make there, the rolls of paper, they usually consume inside their building. They have sheet feeders as part of their corporation that sell sheets to independent companies like ours.
Well, based on the number of trucks you see there when you go down Fifth Street, they ship a lot of stuff somewhere.
They sure do. They ship
all over.
Gobs more paper than we do. But that's where they live, and the volume.
But you're shipping specialty items more.
Correct, in lower quantity. So we'll run 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. Of course, the size of the carton then determines the amount of paper consumed on that order.
Sure.
But they're not interested in those lower volume orders, 500, 250. Well, that's where we live. So we're not so much concerned about how much paper we're consuming, just that we're meeting those other customers' needs and getting the right price for the lower quantity business.
Customer, go ahead, honey.
No.
Well, I was just say, customer A out there somewhere in Podunk, they're making coffee beans to ship, and they want a particular type of shipping carton, and that's what you step up and do. Your salesman find out about this company that's doing this and call them and see if they can't sell what you do to them for their shipping containers.
Correct.
And I would include not only the container, but the graphics on the outside of it, and your designers do all of that.
That's correct.
It's a very finite. It's a pretty sophisticated part of the operation that you perform at Heritage Packaging.
That's correct, and you know, we live in a world of 1/16. So our cartons, we agree on a size. We've either quoted an existing carton that they have, or are providing ideas on a different carton, and we've agreed the box is going to be 12 and 11/16 by 11 by 10 high. It can't be 12 and 5/8. It's got to be 12 and 11/16. That's the size that's agreed on. So if we're shipping them something, we have to be very careful with how we produce the carton. And you're right, Bill. We identify prospects. We have outside salespeople. We're looking online to identify the areas that we want to go. What companies are in those areas? What do they do? We try to get an idea of what they do before we go in there, so we're not going in blind.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just happens to be on the way to somebody else, and our salesperson will stop in, drop a card, and get the name of the people who do the purchasing of that product. We then approach them and say, hey, we'd like to be of service to you. And they've already got a supplier, so we're kind of horning in on somebody else's relationship there. Sure. But that's our business. You just kind of have to work that. And with the assistance of our designer, oftentimes if they have a design need, we can help them, or we'll bring them prototypes, samples of what a carton would look like, or the style that we think best accommodates their need, and we sell them into that design. But it's always with the best interest of their product in mind, and that's where we have a high degree of success, from our salespeople to the design aspect of it, to really the personal touch that we put into providing that package to that customer.
Well, you're a pretty high-tech outfit if you got to measure 11/16.
Yeah,
what do you do, laser?
It's funny you say that, because people say, well, how hard is it to make a box? Well, believe it or not, it's harder than you think. And it is. It has to be so specific, and we agree to a certain logo and the color of the ink and the ink coverage and the print required. We got to be spot on. We try not to take on pieces of business that fall outside of our capabilities, because that's just a recipe for failure, and oftentimes you find yourself entertaining something that you really shouldn't ever have been mixed up with in the first place. And so we're very careful about that. That doesn't happen often, because we do know what our limitations are, and we do know what we do best, and we try to stay away from the things that we don't do very well.
Yeah, why set yourself up for failure?
Let
it come organically.
Yeah. Every failure comes with a big dollar sign that isn't a good thing for us.
Well, you know,
yeah.
Part of the reason for having Greg Basford with us today, we have some manufacturing, not many today, unfortunately, facilities here in Lincoln that are very, very important to us. Judy and I thought it'd be nice to begin to highlight them and let our listeners know what we have here in our own backyard.
That's great.
That's so important to us. Judy's daughter works with Eaton, major contributor to our community in many ways, as you well know, Greg.
Yep, sure are.
And we're going to work our way around our manufacturers and kind of showcase them a little bit. But in the meantime, we're going to have to showcase some commercials. We have some. It's called Capitalism System. We have sponsors. Go right ahead, James. And we're live in the studios here, not the hospital. We're live in the studios, WLCN.
Well, if you have to go to the hospital, Bill, you'll be happy here because they like people.
Well, we like to have Greg Basford here.
People hear you crying for help.
That's right.
He is here in his capacity as manager of Heritage Packaging. We're finding a little bit more about that business on the west side of town. Just don't drive by, folks. The salute as you go by. It's an important thing in our community. And speaking of such mundane matters as money, economically, they're very important to our community because you have a pretty decent-sized payroll. And as you and I visited yesterday, it's my understanding that a payroll will turn over 6 or 7 times in the community before it scats out. Mm-hmm. So it's really important.
Significant, sure.
And it's a clean operation.
That's important to us. We had an OSHA inspection about it. I would say a little over 2 years ago. If you know anything about OSHA, they just show up and say, "Hey, we're here. Show us your place. How safe are you?" And
drop in on you.
And they're self-funded, so they got to find something.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
And all the box plants I've worked in the 6 different box plants prior to Heritage, in the 4 states I worked in, OSHA shows up, and they always find something. So okay, right. We're waiting for that day they walk through the door, and he walked through the door and asked, a very nice gentleman. Took him on a walk around the plant, and he commented, to your point, Bill, about 3 times as he walked around how clean it was. Mm-hmm. Well, it's clean for one reason, because it drives safety. Corrugated sheets on concrete slip and slide, and people go down with them. And our production supervisor, Rick Washam, and myself are just so particular about how clean our operation has to be for our employees' safety. We cut paper, we make dust, and I don't want anybody ever walking out of that factory in a different condition than how they walked in. I have a personal responsibility to each one of our employees. And by the way, you talk about our company and the economic impact that we have in the community, and we're just one of many, but we worked hard over the 9 years. It was 9 years ago last Friday that we purchased Heritage Packaging.
Well, happy anniversary.
Thank you. We worked hard to get that workforce that we're proud of, and I have an excellent group of workers out there, really good, excellent salespeople, really good office staff. I mean, you try to get the people that make your company successful. I call us a silent little success on the west side of town, because not a lot of people they think we're international people. Oh, you're that box plant. I said, well, it depends on which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
We're the little guy, but we do well, and we're moving our company forward, growing, and we plan on being here and being that success and that impact economically for a long time here in Lincoln.
I noted in your design room you had quite a number of samples of products for which that you've created, and that's pretty interesting. A lot of variety, certainly not a humdrum bunch of boxes up there. There was a lot of creativity. Right. That I saw. No,
it's important. You always, it's what I've said as being vice chair on the alliance, that things change and you got to change, and we got to at Heritage Packaging, just much like the city of Lincoln, you got to find things that you do well and do better, and that create different in the world of business, other revenue sources for us. Things that aren't the one thing that we're going to rely on. We need to rely on a whole bunch of different things, so that we're not. First of all, we don't want one customer that represents too much of our business, because if one customer goes down, we go down with them, and that's dangerous.
Yeah.
That's why we have a designer, Bill, and you met him yesterday, Gary Lambert. Gary's an excellent designer, and he's a sales extension of our salespeople to help those customers arrive at the package, to arrive at the right color, to arrive at the right art, and those are the things that we do that help build that relationship to where we're someone who's hard to dispense with. That's what we try to become, a supplier to our customers that is hard to dispense with, that we do such a good job for them, they wouldn't want to have to consider somebody else, and that takes a lot of hard work and a lot of time sometimes.
You mentioned color. That sounds like an easy thing, but you can't just say, I want red logo on there, or a blue logo, because there are umpteen shades of even black and white.
Correct. So we have color-coded Pantone matching system, PMS colors, that oftentimes are our customers. That blue, that turquoise blue in your shirt, is a color that sometimes is that exact blue for that customer's logo. They don't want a blue that's close to that.
No.
It's got to be that blue. So we have to get that ink in-house. We have to make sure that we're carrying the specific red, the specific blue, the specific green that meets their company's colors, because when that carton arrives at their facility, that's the first thing they're going to scrutinize. How clean does our logo look, and is it the right color? They're going to eventually pop the box open and see if it's the right size too, but they're looking at the color.
I presume in many cases that's subject to one person's interpretation.
Except that when you have a little color book, color swatch, that you're matching it up to, you put that down on top of what we just printed, it better match. And at that point, it's the interpretation of the eye, but it's so close, it's got to be on that color.
But you must have to do a little in-house mixing, because you'd have an awful capital outlay to have every color in the world on hand.
That's a great question. Thankfully, we're able to identify most customers' colors come out of our stock ink colors that we carry. They're close enough to the blue or whatever, because they're not really, this is the color, but we say, well, other than getting into a specialty ink, which is going to cost you this, we have this color. Is it close enough? And 8 times out of 10 it is. I mean, very, very, very close to the color they're looking for. The point you made would be if we were someone who did a lot more graphics than we do currently. We would have what's called an ink kitchen, and we'd carry all the colors that fall within the process color landscape and be able to mix those colors in a kitchen to hit the right amount of ink exactly to that color. We don't do enough of that sort of business to justify an ink kitchen, but what you just said is exactly how you try to avoid some of that ink cost. You have an ink kitchen. You mix up just what they need, specific to their color, and there's a lot of people within our industry that are very high volume, very specific, high graphic companies that have that ink kitchen, because they are matching very, very specific colors that we just can't carry a full kit on, a full kit of ink, which is rather expensive.
Yeah, right.
I presume you're in a very competitive business.
Highly competitive for many years.
How big a territory would your sales territory be geographically, Greg?
As a rule of thumb, we go out roughly 200 miles in any direction. Having said that,
we keep it fairly tight.
Yeah, because we do ship it to some of our other customers' divisions in other states. Hey, ship this to our plant in Kentucky. Ship this to Texas or whatever, which we do on a regular basis as well with common carriers. But because freight is such a real component cost of the cost of the carton, how much it costs once it leaves our facility to get to the ultimate destination, when you start getting too far away, you're now into other box companies' backyards who are a lot closer to you, have representation who lives nearby that can get there in a lot more an easier basis. The cost becomes the freight factor. So you try to get your hands around the business closest to home and kind of grow your territory out then.
Now your containers are shipping containers more or less. They're not like if you open up the box of kibbles for your little doggy, you don't make those. That's a thin cardboard.
That's called chipboard.
Chipboard.
Yep, chipboard. That's a different form of paper, different industry. Oftentimes, we buy and sell some chipboard to a handful of customers. They have the chipboard box, they want the carton, they want to buy everything from one company. So we do it's kind of the packaging supply thought process as well. The more things that we can supply to our customer, the more important we are to them. So we can supply them a chipboard carton that goes inside the box that we're producing for them, then they're buying multiple things from us, and we become, frankly, more important to them.
Well, bottom line is, Judith, we're talking about a very sophisticated operation out there. They don't just buy a bunch of cardboard and slap it together and make boxes, or ship knockdown boxes and ship them out there and let the people put them together.
We don't schlep the carton together, Bill. That's exactly right.
No
it's funny
schlepping.
No schlepping. We have customers who come through regularly on plant tours and are impressed with, first of all, from the outside looking into the points you made, a box is a box is a box, right? But when you get deep into the company or go into international paper, you'll see that it's a lot more sophisticated. It's got to be so much more tighter the way that you run your operation, because we can't fail. We got to get off this order and get on to the next one, because we got due dates we got to meet. So it's a pretty active daily environment. But to your point, Bill, very competitive, highly competitive industry.
And you don't sell them a box that's roughly 8.5 by 11.
We have
not so much.
We do have some printer customers. We make 8.5 by 11 cartons. Yep. So, but it's not, to your point, it's not stock cartons. These are custom cartons to a specific need.
As you say, the 16th of an inch.
16th of an inch,
and,
as opposed to a 10-10-10 or a 12-12-12. You can call Uline and get those to your house tomorrow. You only need 10. Well, that's where they live, and they could do it. They buy thousands of these things and put them into the warehouse. Well. That's what they do well, and they're not into the custom box business. So it's two distinct places in the market.
Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame.
It is.
How many salespeople do you have on the street, Greg?
We have 5 now.
Wow.
Yeah. Just sent a young guy who's worked in the factory for 10 years, helped put him through college, and he got his degree. He did it all on his own at Heartland College. Dustin Tibbs, who just started out on the road for us here in the last month.
You know, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think people don't understand that industry, in many cases, will do that for a real promising employee. They'll educate them and keep them, and by golly, they got something going for them then.
I can't imagine anything better than hiring from within, promoting from within.
Well, because you know that person.
Sure, absolutely.
Like
and he's dedicated.
Becomes a built-in loyalty factor, too.
Sure, absolutely.
And that's terribly important in today's world of so long, see you tomorrow.
Right, it's true. And we're only as good as the sales that he goes out and generates. So we're going to give him all the support that he deserves, and he'll go out there and he'll succeed. I'm quite confident in him and all of our salespeople's continued opportunities to grow their territories. We have a really good team.
Yeah, I met a bright young man yesterday.
That was Brian Chandler, who's one of our senior salespeople. We have Doug Pitchford, Terry Biggs. Terry, of course, is a Lincoln person, one of our excellent employees, and just a great salesperson.
You know, this very minute, I didn't know that that's what Terry did.
Terry works at Heritage Packaging and has for a lot of years. He's a guy I rely on.
One of my favorite young men.
He's an excellent guy.
Knew his mother and dad very, very well.
And the gentleman you met yesterday, Brian Chandler, has been with us 6, almost 7 years. He's now transitioning into a sales manager's role, particularly to help our younger salespeople to continue to grow their sales abilities and to grow their territories. And frankly, because I'm a one-man gang and there's only so much I can do, and there comes a point in time where you got to delegate some things, and I'm there. That's why I've made one of our people in the office, Angela Kapling, our customer service manager. Another person, Kara Slack, she's now our controller, and because there comes a point in time where one person tries to do too much, and I'm always. I understand that something could happen to me tomorrow and the company's got to go on, so I got to have people in place.
Well, it takes a smart person who's willing to delegate, who's able to pick out someone to whom they can delegate, and then you put that trust in that person. Now trust them, let them do it.
Indeed. You hope that you position your people properly. There's never a guarantee, but I believe that the people feel that their opinion counts, that buy-in from upper management is something that they know matters. They'll be more inclined to want to suggest things, to be an active part of the company, and we try to drive that in our little company. We have 29 employees, and some part-timers this summer. Terry's son, my son, when we need them, summer help. I want the people's input, because oftentimes they're the ones that come up with the greatest suggestions because they're working with the product every day.
There's having a person on the road is an expensive operation.
Good salespeople don't come cheaply.
Yeah, right. Notwithstanding just the basic salary, but it's a concurrent cost to go with that.
Yeah. So it's a pretty good expense, to your point, with the travel, with entertainment, with just other expenses that a salesperson incurs as they're out traveling every day. But those are the costs of doing business. If I have the right people out there, we're going to over-absorb those costs over time, and at the end of the day, we're going to come out of this, they and us, in a good place. So you got to have faith in your salespeople. I've told them, I've been doing this for a long time, and I was mentored under a couple people far brighter than me, and I've always remembered what they told me, and you got to support your people. But at the end of the day, your salespeople have to be adults. They have to go out there and do it themselves. I'm not going to call them at 7 o'clock in the morning and wonder what they're doing. No. It's something that, and listen, it's black and white. It's
you got the wrong guy on the road.
That's right. That's right. And it's in the numbers, and you have an obligation for everybody else who still works there to make sure you get the right people off the bus and the right people on, the wrong people off and the right people on. So that's all part of refining your business. But I can tell you with a high degree of confidence, we have an excellent group of people at Heritage.
And there's something to be said for an individual who's able to work at a smaller outfit because they are an individual.
Sure. Yeah, it's easier to fall into the crowd in a larger company and kind of get lost in the crowd.
Well, and you're not employee number 70.
I'm not. That's exactly right. And we're at 29, so 70 is a long ways away yet.
You betcha.
But that's, it's 29 payroll. That's significant in this community. Now, your raw products, the people from which you get your supplies, they come from how far away?
Our paper, our primary paper suppliers, one's located in Valparaiso, Indiana, and then we have our primary source out of Chicago, and then another source out of St. Louis. Because these big companies that make the sheets of corrugated are always located in larger metro areas.
Sure.
Because they're serving more independents that are closer to their marketplace. That's correct.
Can I interrupt you?
Well, you usually do. I don't know why you'd ask now.
You're so want to say about put something on the bar besides your elbows. Well, he did. Let's talk about the Alliance for the last 5 minutes. You wanted to ask him about that.
Well, yes. I want to put my tiptoe shoes on. I want to be very careful. Greg is one of our folks here in the community, in our community industries, and in the smaller business owners and so forth, who contribute to our community. They put something on the bar besides their elbow. That's an old Western expression that I remember from ever. And no community works without somebody putting their bar, something beside their elbow on the bar. Yeah. Right. So, Greg is one of those who is giving of his own volition, his own free time, and his own expertise in business, which is significant. And so we have a few people that have some problems, what's known as the Logan County Alliance, and let's just pour a little oil on the troubled waters, if we may, Greg, to the best of our ability.
Yep, sure.
So there's been some carping, and that's kind of unfortunate. We're too small in this community to have much carping going on. We've got to remember, as I said to somebody who made some smart aleck remark about it, I said, these folks are they're giving it their own time, their own expertise to help out in the community. And if you keep on throwing mud in their face, they're going to say, to hell with this, and quit. So let's kind of address some of the problems that have come up about the Alliance and kind of put oil out there, Greg, on these troubled waters.
Yeah, I really don't know what to say other than the fact that we're just a bunch of people and community volunteers, business people, trying to do the right thing. Trying to make Lincoln a place that people outside of Lincoln want to come to and experience and visit. And I find it, as an outsider, admittedly I'm an outsider, but I care enough that I want to do this. And I came from a town not all that different than Lincoln in Ohio, and there's a lot of good people here, and most of those people have in my opinion, have their minds in the right place about the future of Logan County and Lincoln. And and it's never perfect anywhere. You can go everywhere. It's never perfect. It's always that way. What I find a little bit disappointing in Logan County, particularly as it pertains to the alliances, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, there's this small contingent that they're not listening. It doesn't matter what you say or how you say it or when you say it. They've already got their minds made up. Their negative energy is a draw on the progress of this community. I mean, progress doesn't come easy in smaller communities, and Lincoln is certainly no exception there. In fact, it's progression here is something that happens in a snail's pace. But a lot of that is because you have too many people who don't understand that things are always changing. My parents told me, as they told all of us, that one thing you can count on in your life is change. And you got to get on board with it and do the things that are going to help drive your community forward and make it a place people want to come and live and visit and spend time in, as opposed to always finding something wrong in the personal agendas of some people in this community. I don't get it. Maybe I haven't been here long enough, I guess, to get it. But we're a bunch of people. The board, which is Tom O'Donohue, Sal Paulus, Gene Bruner-Giacchino, Keith Snyder, Frank Adubato, myself, are all good, hard-working people who are just trying to do the right thing and take what's been given to us and drive this community forward and take the events that are all part of the Alliance. And you know, Andy Hake had left as president and CEO here this past December, and we got Kathy Wilhite in now, and Kathy's phenomenal. And she wants to do the right thing, but you got to give it a chance. And Rome wasn't built in a day. And people were expecting all these great things to come out of the Alliance in our first year. Well, we did some really good things, which have sadly been minimized by many people in the community. But we're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to find things that make people want to come to this county to help drive economic growth and activity, to make it a strong chamber. I was on the board of the chamber for 5 years before I became a board member with the Alliance, and we're doing the right thing. But there's just so much negative publicity out there that it tends to overshadow the things that we can be proud of, and we always feel as if we're chasing our tail. And are we perfect? Of course not. And we look after a year under our belts and say, okay, what can we do better? Yeah,
well, they made this mistake here and this mistake there, so let's build on that and learn from it.
Absolutely. And we would never shy away from, whether it's in my business or whether it's a member of the Alliance, the mistakes we make. But also, very little is ever spoken of the good things that we do. And you know, the events that have now rolled out of what was just the Balloon Fest, which is going to be another great Balloon Fest this year, are things that make people want to come to Lincoln, and the merchants benefit because you got people from outside of the community coming here, and the hotel owners benefit because you got beds and heads. Yet there's this contingent out there that just doesn't want to hear any of that. So, but having said that, you can't get hung up on that. You can't get caught up in the weeds, as they say. We've got to continue to do the things that drive this community forward, because the last census showed us a lot. Logan County's getting smaller, and people can turn their heads to that's not good. They can turn their heads to that or not. But if we find reasons for people to want to come here, to live here, to stay here, in the end, this will be an economically thriving county.
Well, as the age-old saying says, nothing is constant as change.
Correct.
And you don't have to be Plato or Aristotle to come up with that. That's just basic common sense. And I suppose it's inevitable in any community. You're always going to have a certain part of naysayers, but it becomes difficult. You know, as I said to somebody in that discussion that we had, you know, at the end of the day, these people can leave their office and go home. But instead of going home to their families and maybe a little relaxation or working around the house, they go to community meetings, and they put another 1 or 2 or 3 hours in, and people are going to forget that. And I think they need to remember that very seriously. People, without the volunteers, nothing happens in any community.
Absolutely. You got city and county government people who really need to get on board with the things that are happening here to help drive future growth in this community. And there's too many of those folks too. There's some really, really good ones. There's some ones that seem to be hung up on personal agendas, which at the end of the day, when you're an elected official, you're acting on behalf of a constituency, yet you're doing nothing but chasing your own personal agenda. I'm not so sure you're serving the public good.
That's exactly your own agenda. That's exactly right. Well, once again, Mr. Ash's clock is working, and that's kind of too bad. We always have a problem with this clock. It gets up to 9 o'clock every Wednesday morning, Greg.
Pretty quickly.
Pursuant to the conversation of making boxes and then the last comments about working in the community, we always try to come up with a quote that's somewhat analogous to the day. Sometimes life gives us lessons. Some of them are sent in ridiculous packages. Thank you, Greg Basford.
I'm hoping I made one of those.
Thank Greg Basford, Packaging.
Thank you for having me here. I very much appreciate it.
Very much, Greg.